You're listening to Miss Style, Strength, and Grace with Deidra Murphy. This is your one-stop shop for style, fashion, health, and fitness. Deidra's passion is to help empower women to reach their fullest potential, both inside and out. Deidra and her guests will be discussing how to develop your style, health, and lifestyle hacks to energize your day and inspire you to keep reaching higher levels of success. Deidra is a professional fashion stylist, health guru, and Mrs Washington 2017. It's time to get open and honest with Deidra.
Well, hello and welcome today. I am super excited to be here and interviewing another guest today. Her name is Sharee Samuels, and I met her because of the Mrs Washington Pageant. She is a contestant coming up for the 2018 go-around of Mrs. Washington in June, so she'll be vying for my crown to steal it away from me. But she's also the founder and creator of the fitspiration blog, A Funeral for My Fat. She's a published author of A Funeral for My Fat, My Journey to Lay 100 Pounds to Rest. And through all that, she was also featured on the cover of People magazine in January of 2014, profiled again in People for the magazine's Half Their Size, The Ultimate Diet Guide in July of 2014. She's also been featured on Good Morning America, E! News, Extra, and OMG Insider. On top of all that, Sharee is also a school psychologist and lives with her husband in Marysville, Washington. So hello and welcome to Sharee.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Oh, thanks. I feel honored as I was like looking through all of your information, checking out your different blogs and your Tumblr accounts and everything. I was like, holy cow, this girl, like I have so many questions and I'm just hoping that we can get through them all and share as much information with our listeners as possible. So if you're ready, I'm ready to dive on in.
I'm ready.
All right. So, I want to hear a little bit about your story. I mean, at 17, you weighed 256 pounds. Obviously, that in and of itself, to lose 120 pounds is a huge goal to an endeavor to overtake. So what was the catalyst for you deciding to turn your life around?
Both my mom and my sister are both small and fit. And my dad has always been healthy. My brother at the time was a teenager, so he had your typical teenager metabolism. And I just looked like an anomaly in my family. And when it graduated senior year, it kind of just hit me like, I don't have the same body that everyone else in my family has. Like something needs to change. I have to do something different. And my mom was always my strongest supporter. Her and my dad encouraged me in everything that I did. And so I started with Weight Watchers, and that taught me some tools and just started picking up things here and there. And eventually I found a book called Skinny Bitch, which is about a vegan diet. It's a hilarious, super crass but funny book on taking weight loss and your health seriously. And that book really spoke to me. And I read it in one day and walked downstairs and I said, Mom and Dad, I'm vegan. And it's almost been 9 years and I'm still vegan. But like that was just my turning point. Was I'm tired of feeling this way. I want to do something for myself, and I could also maturity too. There's a big difference between 14 and 17, 18. So
yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. Well, and speaking of being 17 at the time, how much of an impact did that not only have with you and your relationship with, say, your family, but even with friends and other, acquaintances, peers? Like, what impact did that have?
So I was 17 and I looked like I was 27. I just looked so much older than everybody else. At that time, that's more than 10 years ago, they didn't have cute plus-size clothing options. So I had to shop at plus-size women's stores, and that really impacted me as well. And, it was just, I never shared with my friends that I felt that way, but when I look back and think about like, what was I really feeling? I mean, it was lonely. I never felt ugly. I didn't feel worthless or anything like that. But I just really didn't feel like I was who I was supposed to be.
Mm. Now, when you came out to your friends and said like, hey, I'm going to start this weight loss journey, were your friends supportive? I mean, obviously you said your mom was supportive, but you know, it can be hard, I think, for teenagers to really grasp that undertaking.
For them, it was more of like a passing time. Like, oh, you're going to the gym. I'll go to the gym with you. Or like, oh, you're do curves, then I want to do curves. They didn't have to take it seriously like I did. For me, it was my health was at risk and the rest of my life. And for them, it was just like, oh, yeah, if you're doing it, I'll do it too. But none of my friends needed to lose over 100 pounds, and no one in my family needed to lose over 100 pounds. So I had people supporting me, but it was very much so my journey and mine alone.
That's amazing, though, still. I think, you know, it can be hard for teenagers to understand that and not think that it's just like, oh, I always think of like Mean Girls when she's like, I really want to lose 3 pounds.
I know.
What?
Yeah.
But you know, what's funny is I actually used to go to curves with my mom because she started a weight loss journey and I was trying to kind of support her. And, you know, I was always a really active teenager with cheerleading and gymnastics and things. So I didn't necessarily need to lose weight, but for fun, I would go to curves with her, and it really does help, you know, feel that motivation. And I know that she felt more accountable to me because she knew I wanted her to, I was being the one to hold her accountable to go to curves.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my mom. She joined Weight Watchers with me to lose a stubborn 5 pounds. And like, that was so frustrating to me, but I mean, it meant a lot to have my mom there, and she still is there for me and one of my best workout partners. But I mean, it's just, I'm glad I had her with me. It's just funny when I compare her stubborn 5 to me 120.
Right. You're like, okay, yours is going to take you about like a month and mine's going to take 5 years. I get it.
5 years.
So you documented this whole journey on Tumblr. Is that a blog? I'm not familiar with Tumblr, so I'm not sure what it is. But
yeah, it's just a site that can host tons of different blogs, and the one I just stumbled upon.
So why did you decide to start documenting this journey on Tumblr, and what did that do for you as you went through your weight loss?
Yeah, so I was a junior in college for my undergrad, and I was really serious about losing weight. At the time I started my blog, I had lost maybe 80 pounds. And so I was just doing social media surfing and stumbled upon a really dark part of Tumblr that promotes eating disorders. And it was really shocking. It was really sad to see how much attention these really unhealthy views on eating and exercise were getting. And so it sparked in me like, well, I want to show people you don't have to starve yourself in order to lose weight. Like, I've lost 80 pounds and I've done it healthy. And so what prompted me to start it was because I wanted to show a healthy way to lose weight, and it just gained momentum from there. And then since then, there are tons of other healthy blogs that have popped up to really promote you can lose 100 plus pounds and be eating more than 1,200 calories a day and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you can still feel satisfied and not have hunger pains all the time, but do it in, you know, a clean, healthy way. That's awesome. So it almost seems like you were kind of ahead of the game when it came to, you know, blogging and fitness nutrition when it on social media and everything like that. Do you feel?
Yeah, and it was also hard because I couldn't find stories of girls my age that were trying to do what I was doing. I would read, you know, a couple articles in magazines, but nothing that felt really personal. And I wanted that. I wanted to create a culture and a community where we could share like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or this is what I did to overcome this. So that's what I strived to do. And I did it. And it's really exciting to look back, and social media has evolved and morphed into so many other things. So I'm less active on my blog than I was when I was in college, but now I have my book and Instagram and all these other forms where I can still communicate with the people who have been on the journey with me ever since I created it.
Yeah. Well, with, especially Instagram and other forms of social media right now, it's so much easier, I think, to have that instant access to, people.
Yeah.
Versus like blogs, it's like, okay, you got to be found, you got to be updating it on the back end. Versus like Instagram, you can do an Instagram post in less than 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden you can reach a huge audience.
Mm-hmm. And when I was in college, I would come home and that would be my debriefing, was answering questions on blog and, writing out all these things and making videos. And now, I have a full-time career. The last thing I want to do is come home and write and answer questions and things like that. So it is so much. I love Instagram. That's my main source of social media right now.
Me too. I'm always like, ooh, what can I post on Instagram today? But you also have an active YouTube account, and I've seen that. And as far as, some of the things that you're posting on there, I noticed a lot of your journey was kind of documented, like, okay, now I've lost this much. This is where I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Do you still post on your YouTube? And if you do, like, what kind of things are you posting nowadays?
I'm not as current on my YouTube. It requires a lot of time to edit videos and sit down. And that is a New Year's resolution goal for me, is to be more active on my YouTube channel. That's the number one request I get for like emails and my blog questions is, when am I going to do videos? What I would like to do is to focus on the chapters in my book and kind of just expand on them. Talk about a little bit of why I wrote it, how I did, and go that direction. I love my YouTube channel. It just is going to require some effort on my part to keep it going. But it is a very common ask, and I want to honor what people are asking for.
Yeah, it just needs a little curation and TLC. I wanted to ask, what are some of the most effective ways that you found to help inspire others to lose weight, but not only lose weight, but do so in a healthy manner?
So for me, and in terms of even my platform for Mrs. Washington, it's all about finding what healthy looks like for you. Because I did so many different diet fads and all these different exercise regimes, and it wasn't until I found something that spoke to me where it clicked, and I wanted to exercise and I wanted to eat healthy and I wanted to better myself. And so for me, my goal is always to just share, like, you don't have to do what I'm doing. You don't have to do what your best friend is doing or what you read in a magazine. You just have to find something that you get excited for, or you can learn to get excited for. And so you can create that healthy life, because if you hate running on the treadmill and that's the only form of exercise you're allowing yourself, then you're not going to stick with it. And so that's what I really want people to see and to learn and to understand. And that's always been my push, is you got to find what works for you. I'm vegan. My husband's not vegan. Our marriage works. He's healthy. He's active. You just got to find something that works, and eventually you will become so disciplined where you can do the less enjoyable forms of exercise to help you get to your goals. But until then, finding something that you love and sticking with it is what I continue to encourage.
Oh, I love that. And I can attest to that as well. I used to hate running, and I can run now. I don't detest it as much as I used to. And then a little known fact is you and I are both actually going to do a half marathon in April. So whoop whoop for the girls that used to hate cardio.
I know.
I'm like, give me some deadlifts for days. I will do that forever, but I don't want to run. Don't make me do it. But you can actually get used to it and like it. Oh, you don't like Zumba, or you do like Zumba?
No, Zumba is what got me excited to exercise.
Oh, good. And then it's like fun.
Yeah.
And you're also a certified Zumba instructor, correct? Now, do you do that still, or have you kind of put that on the back burner as you focus more on your career?
I put it on the back burner as of this month.
Oh, okay.
And I was teaching a couple times a week at Anytime Fitness in Marysville. And then before that, I was teaching at a couple locations in Federal Way and then Seattle. And now that it's getting close to pageant season, I need to make sure that I'm dedicating enough time for that. And so I also have time for my husband and family and things like that. So I still do teach like volunteer opportunities for students in schools, but in terms of a paid position, it's on hold for right now.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, you've always got to find balance and find the things that you're super passionate about and, you know, make sure that all the big rocks are put in first. So I totally understand that. That kind of, I wanted to make sure I hit on this because you just mentioned it. And one of my questions was actually about this, but you mentioned that you chose to go vegan. You know, you came downstairs, hey guys, mom and dad, I'm a vegan now. You know, why did you choose veganism in particular? And yeah, let's just start with that one. Why did you choose veganism?
Okay. So the first thing was I thought it sounded cool. And as a 17, 18-year-old, like a lot of things you're doing are because they're trendy. And initially that was it. Like, oh, it sounds cool to be like, sorry, I can't eat that. I'm vegan. But then I realized it worked for me and I felt healthier. I was vegetarian before then on a dare, but vegetarian, I mean, I just ate cheese and pasta and breads. It didn't force me to eat healthier. Vegan did. It was harder to find junk food options. And I liked that I instantly felt healthier because I was forced to eat healthier things. And I stuck matured in being a vegan. It takes a lot of effort to eat a balanced diet, but started out just being a trendy thing to say. And then I realized, wow, it's really making a difference in me.
Yeah. Well, everything happens for a reason. I mean, I'm not vegan. We try to go a little bit more like kind of paleo route-ish. You know, every now and then I have dairy and then I pay for it the next day. And I'm like, you know, maybe it was worth it. Maybe it wasn't. But I just ended up going that route because first I was prepping for Miss Washington USA a few years ago, and I was really trying to lean out, so I cut out the dairy and switched to, you know, coconut milks, almond milks, cut out the grains and everything like that, and I didn't realize that my body had any issues with it for so long. You know, for 24 years of my life, I had those things as part of my regular diet, and then I cut them out for about, you know, 6 months as I prepped for Miss Washington USA. And then the night after the pageant, I went out to the Cheesecake Factory and I had pasta with tons of carbs and gluten and dairy and all the, you know, fats and sugars. And I paid for it for about 3 days. I was sick as a dog. I was like, oh, maybe I do have issues with like gluten and dairy. And, you know, so from then on out, I was like, I'm just going to try and limit those things. But it really does make a huge difference for, you know, your health and how you feel. So is it hard to live in a household where you've got a vegan and a non-vegan?
I think initially it was. So I was vegan about a year before we had even met. So before we'd even started dating. And so it has never been something where I was not vegan when we were dating and then became vegan. So it's always been a part of our life together. But it does limit, I mean, I always have to check the menu if we're wanting to try someplace new. I'm always fine going to a steakhouse because I can get, you know, a steamed potato and, you know, steamed vegetables and things like that. But my husband feels like this really fancy meal, and then I'm just stuck with like a few side dishes. It doesn't bug me. I'm not a picky eater. That's one since being vegan is not every place I go is going to have a gourmet vegan chef, and like that's okay. But I mean, that's the only thing that takes a lot of planning is when we go out. I just make sure to check the menu and that sort of thing. But I mean, it's second nature now. It's been so long, I don't even think about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really admirable too that you have that discipline that when you do go out, it's like, okay, I'm going to check and make sure in advance that they have options, or maybe I eat a little bit heavier right before, so I know I'm eating and not going in starving. It's kind of like really being planned and intentional about your food in your day. Yeah.
And I mean, there's always, could I go to a restaurant and order French fries? Yeah. but that's not very fun and doesn't make you feel good. Now, if it's a day, if they have the best French fries ever, then yeah, that's something too. But every time I go out to eat, I don't want to eat just a plate of French fries.
What? Why not? You got your carbs. Right? It's got fat. I don't know about the protein, but I did want to go back to talking a little bit about your book. So you wrote that book called A Funeral for My Fat, My Journey to Losing, 100 pounds. And I love your saying that I wear black when I work out because it's a funeral for my fat. How did you come up with that about like the whole funeral, laying it to rest?
Yeah, I actually saw like a quote that was pretty similar on Tumblr a long time ago. And I was just drawn to the idea of wearing black to work out. I am always a fan of wearing black to work out. So I'm like, wow, I really like that. And I was trying to come up with a catchy name for my blog, and that reminder of like, well, gain this weight back. Death is permanent. There's nothing more permanent than death. So why don't I just go the funeral route? And so then I it just clicked, and I turned it into a blog. And at one point I did have a clothing line as well, where people could buy official Funeral for My Fat t-shirts. And that was pretty big. I took it down when my book came out because I was rebranding what everything looked like together. But yeah, it just stuck. It was just a funny thing. And I'm like, I like this. I want to run with it. And so, yeah.
I think it's great. And I think it totally fits, the whole branding, and it really, it sticks in your head. You're like, oh, Funeral for My Fat. Like, yeah, I want to kill that off. Still talking a little bit about, health and fitness. So you lose all this weight. I noticed on your YouTube, you also documented your tummy tuck, and was it a rear end lift? And thigh lift. And then you even went on to compete in bikini shows and fitness programs. How many of those did you do? And, what was your placement in those shows?
I did 5 in a span of 2 years.
Okay.
I would not recommend that ever to anybody. It was very, very hard on my body. But I had coaches for every single show that I did. And once I lost my weight and I had my tummy tuck, I was left kind of feeling like, well, what next? What's the next big challenge I can come up with? And bodybuilding is all over Instagram. So I started seeing all these people, these fitness models that I follow, and like bikini, what they do, and they talked about the dedication and the training and the discipline that it takes. And I'm like, I want to try this. I really want to see what my body is capable of doing. So I coaches for vegan athletes and found a few, and ultimately settled on one. And I used her for a few shows. And it was really good. The really difficult thing is I had never lifted weights prior to training.
What?
I mean, there's a difference between 25-pound dumbbells and then 50-pound dumbbells. So I'm like, oh, I do body weight exercises. I do beach body programs. I'm a fitness instructor. I can easily, I have muscle. No, not the muscle that was needed. And so that was my biggest critique from the judges. All the shows I did, I placed close to the bottom. The very first show, I was super upset with my placing because I was in the best shape of my life. I had a 6-pack. I had really well-defined shoulders. And I'm like, how could I not have placed well? But then I didn't have the muscular maturity that comes with years of bodybuilding or gymnastics or people that just naturally put on muscle. So that was disappointing, but I realized I had only done this for me, not for a judge's placing. And so then I did another show a few weeks after my first one, and then I just kept learning from all of them. I never placed top 5, but maybe one day I'll go back in with the knowledge that I have now. and try again for a higher placing. But
yeah. Well, and I think if you go in with the right mindset of like, you're doing this for yourself, then it can be a positive experience. I think that's the same even with pageantry. I mean, you know, you're talking to a woman that got in the best shape of her life and didn't place top 15 at Mrs. America. So I totally understand. But I was going to ask, you know, as far as, you know, bikini competitions go, they're similar in the same realm as pageantry. But what has been the biggest thing that you learned by doing a fitness show?
That just having realistic expectations with what the after feels like, because you are not maintaining a healthy weight or a healthy body fat for long periods of time. And that's really hard on your body. So you go through a very extreme, it's called peak week, leading up to the show to make you, when you step on stage, you have the really tight, full muscle look. That takes a lot of very strategic water consumption and carbs and all these things you don't think about until you have to do it. The next day, similar to how you felt after your Miss Washington pageant, where you went and ate all the food and you felt really bloated and paid for it. It's the same exact thing because your body's trying to regulate water and salt and carbs. And I was not expecting that. And then your body wants to regulate your fat really quickly. So you're at a low body fat percent, and then it wants to get back to a healthy body fat percentage, and you do that. I had a coach that helped me both times, but that was really hard to have 6-pack abs and then 4 days later it's like, do I even work out? Like,
oh, I know the feeling.
Do I do anything?
Like, screw it, I just want to get fat and happy.
Yeah, so that was mentally hard, and it's been over a year since my last show, and balance is still something that I strive to find in my life. But yeah, that just being prepared for the after of doing a show is something I will always tell people. Kind
of like being prepared for both the highs and lows. Like you said, like there's peak week and then there's going to be a low and like a slump after that.
Yeah.
I think it's the same in pageantry. So be prepared for that even at Mrs. Washington. And if you, you know, go on to compete at Mrs. America, it's a similar kind of experience. You know, I got back from Mrs. America, and of course, that whole next day, I was like, food, get in my belly. I mean, and again, not that I didn't starve myself in preparation for Mrs. America, but I also got down to about...
amazing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I was pretty proud of the fact that I got down to like 10% body fat. But the day that I returned home, my mom actually picked me up from the airport, and I was like, I want some Indian food. Like, I was just craving like, salty curry and, you know, just all these like spicy foods. So we went and got Indian food. I ate it that night, and that night I got sicker than a dog, and I think it was just my body like, what is this? What are you putting in me? Like, it couldn't handle it, and I paid for it the whole next day. But yeah, there's definitely like that high and that low, and you know, I'm still paying for it, so to speak. Like, I haven't really told a lot of people about this, but I ended up losing my menstrual cycle because of getting so low in body fat percent, and I still haven't been able to get that regulated again. So it's a huge toll on your body, and I can't imagine doing it for as many shows as you did and how hard that has to be on your system.
Yeah, and that's a common side effect in bodybuilding too, is that you lose your period. And there are, just with any forms of fitness, there are dark sides, and some contestants strive for losing their menstrual cycle. And that's how they know that they've achieved the level of fitness. And that was never me. It was never my coaches. But yeah, I mean, you want to make sure you are mentally strong enough to put your body through a very hard, disciplined cycle so you can be prepared for the highs and the lows. But yeah, it's tough. And it is hard to talk about. It's hard in bodybuilding to talk about. And as you said, it's hard in pageantry to talk about. But it happens.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit from that. And then I've got kind of two other gears that I want to switch into before we end today's interview. I wanted to switch gears and talk about the Mrs. Washington pageant a little bit. So like I said, you know, bikini shows, fitness shows are similar in pageantry, but, you know, in pageantry, you don't necessarily always need to get down to like a 10% body fat. You know, when I won Mrs. Washington, I definitely wasn't at 10% body fat. But it's about more than that. You know, pageantry, I think, helps build women confidence and poise and interview skills. So why did you decide to start running and vying for the title of Mrs. Washington come June?
I wanted to do something that's more than just how I look from my shoulders down. Bodybuilding is a very vain field, and it is very, there's nothing, no one cares about where you've been, what you've accomplished, how well you present yourself, anything like that. It is just how well do you look on the outside in a bikini. And that was a very, that was hard for me. And even because I wanted to use it as an opportunity to show people like, yeah, you can lose, weight, you can have stretch marks, you can have surgery scars and still be up here on stage. But there was never an opportunity for that. Like it cared, not that no one cared, but it was never weighted. I mean, when you're judged, I was compared to people who had been bodybuilding for 10 years, and that was their profession. So there was no backstory. And it was actually my husband that was like, have you thought about looking into something else where you can still do fitness, but make it in more of a inspirational type setting where you can share more and inspire people and help people see that you can overcome things. And so I stumbled across Mrs. Washington ads online, and I'm like, hey, I think I found something here.
You're like, what is this?
And my mom actually competed in Mrs. Washington back in the 80s.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And she won Mrs. Congeniality.
Aww.
So it was before the current director, Pam, took over, but she had competed before, so I thought that was really cool too.
That is cool. That's a neat, history behind it, and that's also why I love the Mrs. Washington pageant, is kind of the story and the camaraderie that comes with it. Yeah. But I think that's fabulous that you're able to see something like, a pageant as something that's not shallow, because, a lot of people see pageantry and they're like, oh, it's really shallow and vain, but you looked at it from the aspect of, it actually helps me share the story that you have of losing over 100 pounds and inspire others. And I think that's fabulous. Like that's exactly why I decided to do Mrs. Washington myself, was not just about the weight loss, but my struggles with overcoming insomnia and depression and, getting back to a healthier me. And, when it comes to pageantry, have you ever done a pageant before, or just the fitness competitions?
I have never done a pageant before. I have only ever done events.
Okay. Well, yeah, and that's the great thing about it, is you'll get to be interviewed by the judges and actually share your story and open up. And I think that's what makes pageants so much more different than any other type of physical competition. And then I wanted to kind of ask you as well, what will be your platform as you run for Mrs. Washington?
Yeah, my platform is just helping people find a healthy that works for them, and sharing that healthy looks different for everybody. It's not a cookie cutter lifestyle. It's can be really overwhelming when you want to start to be healthy. Like, well, where do I even go? There's paleo and vegan and low carb and keto and all these other types of diets, and it can be really daunting to find something that you need to do. So I want to share that you just have to find something that works for you and you can stick with and make it personalized, because healthy looks different for everybody.
Oh, I love that.
So that's what I want to talk about, and show that I started with Zumba and then fell in love with all these other exercises. And now, I do bodybuilding, but you don't have to start with bodybuilding and fasted cardio and weighing your food. You need to start somewhere for you. And then that can morph into more challenging fitness things.
Yeah. I like to think of it as like eating the elephant one bite at a time, and just taking it one piece at a time, implementing small things here and there. Like maybe it's the first month is just focusing on how you're changing your eating if you're trying to lose weight. And then, maybe the next month it's okay. Now I've kind of got that dialed in. Now let's add in some exercise. And it might just be like, I'm going on a light jog first. And that's great. And finding something that you're passionate about. I love that. And then I had another question when it came to pageants. What has been your favorite experience so far as a contestant? I mean, besides getting to meet me and hang out with me.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to running a half marathon with you. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So I have only gone to 2 official pageant events for Mrs. Washington Contestant. So our workshop back in October and then our Christmas party. I would say my favorite thing so far has been meeting such inspirational and educated and poised. It can be, it's just fun to be in a small room with that many driven and passionate women with amazing stories. So that has been my favorite thing so far. I know that once further down it gets closer to June, I'll have other things. I am looking forward to gown shopping.
Ooh.
And all the fashion that comes with the pageant world. So that'll be something that I haven't been able to do before.
Oh yeah. Who doesn't? Well, I'm sure there are people that don't love it, but who doesn't love getting to get dolled up and glammed up in gowns and cocktail dresses and fabulous attire? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I do. That's why I chose to become a personal stylist. I did want to chat for just a couple minutes now, again, switching gears one more time, and talk about the fact that, you speak of being surrounded by smart, empowered, driven women. And here you are, not only did you lose over 120 pounds, but you're also a school freaking psychologist. Tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you decide to go that route? And let's chat a little bit about being a school psychologist.
Yeah, so psychology is a very broad field. There are so many different scopes and practice that you can go into. I knew I loved the brain and I wanted to work with kids, but I wasn't quite sure what area I wanted to go in when I needed to go to graduate school. And I had one assignment towards the beginning of my senior year of undergrad, and we had to write a book, like a short story based on a cognitive theory. So I wrote a children's book. And the professor approached me. He said, Sharee, I know you're not quite sure yet what area you want to specialize in psychology, but I think you should really consider school psychology. No idea. Never even heard of it. I'm like, what is this? I'll look into it. And so I did like it. What a school psychologist does is if a student is having a hard time learning in school, psychologist's job to figure out why. And so I do evaluations for learning disabilities. I figure out if a student has ADHD, what area is it impacting. And I really liked that I can help students feel successful in school. I help create an IEP, if you've heard of that term, an individualized education plan. And the added bonus that really sealed the deal for me is I get paid summers off and all the holiday seasons, all the major things I get off. And then I also, my student loans get waived because it's considered a government service. So I'm like, I like this. And my husband is also in education. He was a teacher at the time. Now he's a principal. But so schedule-wise, it works out really well that we get to enjoy together.
Yeah, I do miss that because I don't know if you knew this, but I am a retired teacher myself, and I do miss having all the holidays off. And although I get to be a little bit more, I taught second grade for a few years, yeah. And so I think it's funny. I always told my kids, they'd always ask, like, at the time it was Miss Stans, like, Miss Stans, do you have kids? And I'm like, no, all of you are my kids. And, I think it's probably similar for you right now because you and your husband don't have kids, correct?
No.
Yep. So you are my kids right now.
Yeah. And a lot of students will be in my office and they'll ask, like, do you have kids? I'm like, no. And they're like, why? 'Cause there's more to life than just having kids right away. But it's cute. I mean, kids don't know that. They think when you get married, you have kids right away.
Mm-hmm. I remember I was a flower girl in somebody's wedding when I was like 3 or 4. And as soon as they got married, like that night, I was like, so when are you having kids? Are you pregnant yet? Do you have kids yet? They're like, it's not how it quite works, sweetie. Like,
yeah.
So I totally understand that. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to kind of wrap up on a few general questions that I typically ask most of my guests on my show. Do you have a current favorite like resource that you've just been binging on, whether it's like a podcast, a show, or a book, or anything?
Yeah. Right now, I really like the Body Reset Diet. It has a couple different volumes. One is more of a cookbook, and then one is just like a reboot mentally and physically. And it's got a lot of really good smoothie recipes.
Ooh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So I've been using that just to get some more ideas. And then another really good book I like is From Stressed to Strong. And it really focuses on prioritizing and reframing like your mindset and your life to focus on like you are important and your goals are important. Feel really overwhelmed. That's a book that I turn to give me some like, okay, I can do this. It's okay for me to take this time to find some things for myself. And reading that book again is what encouraged me to set Zumba on hold for prepping for the pageant. So it still does speak to me, even though I've probably read it like 4 times.
Hey, it happens. I reread things constantly, so I totally get it. Do you have a huge mentor or greatest influencer in your life? And it could be somebody that you know personally, somebody you don't know personally, who has been the greatest influence in your life?
My greatest influence would be my mom. I mean, she's 62 years old and has a 6-pack. She is so fit. She did all my bikini preps with me. She just never stepped on stage.
Oh,
but she could have at any moment. So my mom is definitely my biggest motivator, mentor that I know in person. And then one of my vegan coaches that I had, she is a very holistic, just everything about her life is so nutritionally ingrained. And I love that about her. So even though she is not actively coaching me right now, she is still someone that I turn to a lot for support and guidance and like times of crisis and things like that.
She's the one when you're having like an issue, you like text her, be like, help me out, off the ledge, talk me down.
Vegan fitness model is her brand and then also her book. And so I turn to that too. And message her, email her all that time.
I love it. I'll have to check that out. And then 2 more questions. So what are your top 3 core values?
God. For one, I throughout my journey, I would always pray and that sort of thing. And I talk about this in the book. I know it can sound shallow to pray about weight loss, but for me, that was the biggest thing in my life I was facing at that time was my weight. And so I had to learn, like, it's okay to pray for things that other people might think are petty.
I don't think that's shallow at all. I mean, God tells us that we are the keepers of like our temple. Our bodies are our temple. And, the more healthy we are, the more that we can give, love, and serve. Yeah. So if you're able to lose weight and be more energized and healthier, then that means you can just spread his message and his love even more. So I don't think it's shallow at all.
Thank you. And yeah, so I mean, God is still an active value in my life, in my husband's life, in our marriage. And I do talk about my walk in the book, and how I learned how to talk to myself using kind words and things like that. And family is another core value. I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for my parents. I would not have accomplished as much as I have if it wasn't for my husband. And our workout times that we do together, I mean, we treat them like date nights. They are important to us, and we schedule them in together. And if things start getting too hectic and too crazy, then we, sit back down and think like, okay, how can we still keep this time together? And then health and fitness tie, like health/fitness, is very important because it's something that needs to be invested in. And so often it's taken for granted. And I am the type of person that if I'm not actively investing in my health and my fitness, that I can easily slide back into bad habits. And although I weight for years now, I was an unhealthy person for a long time. So routinely and continually invest in my healthy lifestyle is a very strong value.
Yeah. Well, and it's so good that you keep it as like a core value because like you said, it can be so easy to just slip back into that. And, it can take one weekend away with like holiday parties or something like that. And then it's easy to fall back into those traps.
Yeah, I always make the joke that like my inner fat kid's coming out.
It's like, can I eat the whole cheesecake? Yes. Should I? Maybe not. Or I guess for your case, it would be a vegan cheesecake. Sorry.
Yes.
I love it. And then I've been leaving off with my last question for all my guests, and it is, what does it mean to do things with style and grace?
That's a good one. What does it mean to do things with style and grace? For grace, for me, means that I'd never want to leave a conversation and someone feel like unvalued or that I didn't appreciate anything that they had to say. Mm-hmm. So grace, I feel, is like if I finish the conversation, I don't want them to walk away from it and feel like, wow, that didn't go very well, or I didn't feel like they liked me, that sort of thing. And style can be appearance, but it also means just how you interact with people and how embarrassing, sorry, make people feel after they leave with you. So style and grace to me means people's impression and after meeting with me, and then how they feel about themselves after meeting with me.
Oh, I love that. That's a unique answer. I haven't had anyone say that or anything close to that yet. It reminds me of that saying, like, people don't always remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. Kind of like that. I love that. Well, I've enjoyed chatting with you. I wish we could chat even more. I'm sure we could talk for probably hours. Now, whether or not people would actually listen to us for hours, I don't know. But I do want to give you a chance to share with our listeners, places that people can find you, whether it's your blog, your current blog, your website, or your social media handles. So I'd love for you to share that information.
Yeah, so my most active social media is Instagram. My username is @funeral4, using the number for my fat. If you just Google funeral for my fat, all of my social media accounts will pop up. My website is afuneralformyfat.com. ShareeSamuels.com will bring you to where you can buy my book. I have an active YouTube account. And then I think those are my major ones. I do have a Snapchat, but I don't use it.
Me neither. Don't worry.
I have it. I did it just so I could hold the domain name. But I do have one. Maybe one day I'll use it. but definitely
all
Instagram.
The cool kids are on Snapchat nowadays.
I know.
I don't use mine either, so no judgment.
But yeah, Instagram, YouTube, and then funeralformyfat.com.
Love it. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Sharee, for joining us today. And I look forward to hearing more about you and getting to know you better as a Mrs. Washington contestant.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
So for all my listeners, if you would like today's show notes, be sure to head to stylebydeidra.com for more information and links about Sharee and even other, little tidbits and freebies that I love to give away. So thank you for joining.
Hey ladies, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. To help empower more women, please be a doll and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to stylbydeidra.com.